Hey guys, Tyler here. Today I'm going to respond to a viral video that was done directly by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And so without further hesitation, let's react to it.
There has been no oppression for the white man in this country. You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression.
Before I respond to the argumentation of the video, I first want to state that I have noticed for hard and difficult conversation about the issue about America's past, it seems as though that the framing is almost always the lens of the oppressor versus the oppressed. That is to say, that white men were the ones that basically oppressed minorities, and that the minorities themselves, we were basically at the bottom. While there is no denying the fact that black people, Hispanics, and Asian people were all discriminated in the past, the reality is that America's history is much more complicated than white people oppressor and the minorities, the oppressed. Now, the first argumentation that we all heard directly in the video was that white people in America never experienced oppression. Now, let's look at the historical data that we actually know so far in regards to this particular topic. We do, in fact, have historical signs directly from the time periods where it shows that Italian people as well as Irish people were not allowed to be in certain places based upon their own personal nationality. Now, everybody knows that black people were pretty much the subject of lynchings during that time period. It's very unfortunate that it actually occurred. What's also sad too, besides the fact that black people faced lynchings in the past, is the fact that the Italians themselves also at some point faced some sort of lynchings because they themselves were also Italian. My final example is this. Everybody and their mom knows that black people were in fact the subject of chattel slavery. There is no denying that it actually occurred during America's past history. Did you guys also know that there were also white slaves during America's history? Yes, you heard me correctly. There were also white slaves. Now, based upon the historical information that I do in fact know, we do in fact know that Irish prisoners were shipped directly from Ireland to actually go out and work in the United States. Now, this part of history has not necessarily been taught in many schools for most Americans. We are only taught that black people were also like the victim, of chattel slavery, but not necessarily with the case of the Irish people. You would have to look really deep on the internet to also find this information, but unfortunately, I think that most people in the United States actually have no idea about what occurred against the Irish people when they too were also slaves in the past. Now, one major claim directly from critical race theory is something that is known as white privilege. It argues by the sheer virtue of somebody's skin color, a white person has much more advantages in life in comparison to those who are also minorities. Now, in the examples I brought up, by the case of the Italians and the treatment of the Irish people, if it's really the case that the Irish and the Italians had it best by the virtue of their skin color, how is it that their skin color did not necessarily save them for the case of discrimination, for the case of those buildings, or lynchings, or the enslavement because they were white. If they truly had it best in life simply by the virtue of their skin color, why was it that they were actually mistreated? I think when we use a lens of oppressor versus the oppressed, white people the oppressor and everybody else the oppressed, it completely ignores the nuance of the situation that we're talking about with the case of America's history. Because once again, it was not just the black people that were also oppressed. It was not just the Hispanics that were also oppressed. It was not just the Asians that were oppressed. The system was pretty much bad no matter your racial background.
We didn't ask to be here. We not the same migrants that y'all constantly come up against. We didn't run away from home. We were stolen. So yeah, we are going to sit here and be offended when you want to sit here and act like, and don't let it escape you that it is white men on this side of the aisle telling us, people of color on this side of the aisle, that y'all are the ones being oppressed, that y'all are the ones that are being harmed.
This argumentation operates underneath the assumption that the minorities don't necessarily have a power to actually discriminate or oppress other people. But it's not necessarily true. It doesn't matter how big or small a group is. Anybody, no matter their background, have the ability to actually discriminate or to oppress other people despite their personal status. Now, getting back to the point earlier in the video about the claim of white privilege. In today's climate, it seems as though that there are many things that put white people at a disadvantage in comparison to people like me. Let's take, for example, with the case of college campuses. Because college campuses have minority-only spaces, whereas there's no such white-only spaces for the case of college campuses. Now, we do in fact know, for the case of the Oscars, they have announced a revival of their policies about movie nominations. And what they say for the new revival of movie nominations is that a movie is required to have a set minority of people. If they don't have that particular set of minorities within that movie, then that picture would not be considered for nominations for any type of category. And so a lot of filmmakers are being rejected on the basis of their skin color because there's not enough minorities within a particular movie. For my case, there are black-only scholarships that are catered towards people like me. There is no such thing as a white-only scholarship. That thing that simply does not actually exist. When it comes down to the whole entire case of what happened at Harvard University, we all know that basically what they did was added and subtracted points directly from the white students and the Asian people and added those points to the SAT scores for Black Americans, and they pretty much lost that whole entire case against the Supreme Court. For the case of the job market, many companies are now required to actually hire a certain amount of minorities within a job, like a diversity quota. And of course, they would have to reject many white people who are probably more qualified than the person that was actually hired directly for the job quota. Look no further than with the case of Walt Disney, because they do that all the time for the case of their hiring practices. So again, when we talk about white privilege in the context of the present day, it makes no sort of sense whatsoever, given the fact that minorities probably have more benefits right now in comparison to all the other white people in this country, with the examples I just brought up. But also in the past, it also does not make any sort of sense because, like I said earlier, many white people did not have it good in life because of the virtue of their white skin. Many of them were discriminated based upon their nationality. So, anyway, that's my own personal response to the video that we just saw. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see you guys next video.